So far in our restoration series, we've done the X-Wing and the B-Wing, so I thought it was time to deal with TIE fighters.
Here they come!
We've gotten a lot of requests on how to fix the TIE fighter, and the main thing to know is that if you can fix one TIE fighter, you can fix them all. Kenner made 4 distinct variants of the TIE fighter, and they're all different colors, and they all have slightly different wings. Well, 2 of them have slightly different wings, and 2 of them share the same wings. But the core cockpit assembly is the same. It's identical for every TIE fighter. So if you can get into this TIE fighter cockpit and fix it, you can fix any TIE fighter you encounter. The main problems that arise with the TIE fighter are the wing mechanisms, the breakaway wing mechanisms either freezing up or becoming too sensitive because parts wear out, and the battery light sound assembly, which is very complex in the way that it's packed into this ball. So what I want to show you is how to get into this cockpit, carefully disassemble the battery compartment, and then of course repair it and put it all back together. I have 2 donor ships here right now. Okay, technically I don't have 2 donors. I have 1 donor and 1 childhood survivor. This white X-Wing was given to me randomly by a co-worker who said that her husband didn't want it anymore. The acid had leaked out of the batteries at some stage in this poor TIE fighter's life, and it had eaten away everything, including the wires. So I ended up having to throw the motor away on that when I disassembled it. But I have a new motor for this one, and we're going to see if we can resurrect this little guy and maybe even clean him up a little bit because he's starting to yellow. It looks like this TIE fighter was left outside. It has some mold marks on it. This one's in rough shape. Now the other TIE fighter I have is from when I was a kid, the Darth Vader TIE fighter. This one we got, I think, around 85, 86 on clearance at a Hills store. Anyone remember Hills? And the way that this one went bad is the same as the other one. We moved to England and it was in storage for 3 years. And when we put it in storage, we forgot to take the batteries out. Now, fortunately, the acid in the batteries did not leak down to the motor. It stayed contained to the battery compartment. But some acid leaked onto the exterior of the cockpit, and the corrosion in the battery compartment is extensive, and I'll show you this in close-up. So these are the 2 TIE fighters that we're going to deal with in this restoration. The first thing we're going to do is disassemble them both and get them ready for cleaning. So let's get started. There are 8 screws that hold the TIE fighter cockpit together, and they're easy to access. I've already removed 4 of them for the benefit of this video, so you don't have to see me go through the whole process. But you need to be prepared that when you pull the 2 halves of this TIE fighter pod apart, there's going to be an explosion of springs and some little pieces that you're going to have to keep track of. So let's get started. There's no particular order in removing these, and like I said, they're easy to get at. What makes the TIE fighter unique amongst the Kenner vehicles is that it's one of the few where the electronics are tethering the 2 halves of the ship together. Like with the Snowspeeder and the X-Wing, once you remove the top half, the bottom half has all of the electronics in it. But with the TIE fighter, there are some clips that hold everything together. So I'm lifting off the back half, and as I do, you can see that there are wires holding the top to the bottom. 4 actually. There's 2 attached to the motor, and then there's 2 attached to the battery compartment. Fortunately, these are not soldered on. They are just clipped on, so we can remove these. Might take a little bit of doing. These are now removed. And then you carefully want to then remove them from the engine. You now have the wiring and the light bulb on the bottom half of the fuselage, and we can set this aside for now. I've checked it. It doesn't look like there's any real damage. We're going to have to clean off a little battery acid that's been sitting there for 20 or 30 years, but we'll try and get that off. All right, now for the top half. You have your cockpit chair, which is on a rail system because it comes up through the cockpit. It raises up like an elevator, as you remember. You have your engine, which is mounted via a zip tie. Keep in mind that if the engine itself is not affected by the acid from any corrosion, leave the original zip tie intact. It's the best way to deal with it. Now we can remove the cockpit glass and set that off to the side. Here are the spring assemblies for the release mechanism of the wings. There are 3 pieces involved. There's a cylinder, there's the actual button, and then there's the spring. You can lift the whole assembly out, and then if you wanted to, you could disassemble them into the 3 components. They're not hard to put back together, and they're keyed, so it's not difficult to figure out how to reinstall them. The nice thing about the TIE Fighter is that there's only one decal in the cockpit assembly, and that is in the chair. Otherwise, you don't have to worry about any stickers getting ruined if you're going to be cleaning the cockpit assembly. Now, the wings, of course, are another game altogether. But as far as the cockpit's concerned, you just lift. This is sitting on some rails. You lift it up off the rails and then push it up through the cockpit itself, and the chair is out. Now, at this stage, what I want to do is submerge this in vinegar. We're going to suspend it and we're going to submerge it in a container of vinegar, being careful not to let the vinegar get higher than about right here on these copper tabs. And then we're going to leave it overnight and see how things work out. Same with this one. So I'm going to get this one disassembled, and then we're going to get these dunked in some vinegar. So stay tuned for that. I wanted to show you this real quick. You can see that this white TIE Fighter was in much worse shape than the Darth Vader TIE Fighter. I had to remove the wiring completely and the engine because the acid had corroded down the wires and eaten away at everything. So what we're going to have to do with this TIE Fighter is actually solder new wiring into it to hopefully get the light to work. Now, if the LED doesn't work, the light bulb on the front, we're going to find ourselves with a new challenge, and I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to correct that. So this should get interesting. The 12-hour vinegar bath was a great choice. We got rid of a ton of corrosion for both TIE Fighters. The copper is a lot clearer now. It's miraculous, really. But the acid damage was pretty extensive. So I had to go in on the Darth Vader TIE Fighter and use some emery cloth to do some additional polishing to get those contacts to come back together for the batteries. But I was able to accomplish it for the Darth Vader TIE Fighter. I also learned something about the white TIE Fighter that I didn't know, and that's going to take the white TIE Fighter restoration into part 2. The internal design of the battery compartment for the original white TIE Fighter is completely different on the left-hand side of the battery compartment. Instead of using a press-fit copper connector, a plate like the other TIE Fighters, it actually uses a removable double spring system with a wire that attaches it underneath a plastic tab. That makes it removable, and it also means that in this TIE Fighter, it's completely missing. So I'm going to have to find a way to replicate that spring connector, and we'll do that in part 2 and get the white TIE Fighter back on its feet. But let's rebuild the Darth Vader TIE Fighter now and see its resurrection. Alright, so the first wires to put back in are the motor wires, gray and green. The way I like to do this is put the green in the one that's closest to the bracket, so the one farthest away from you. And the way you want to do this is you want the dimple of the connector to be away from you when you slot it. Okay, so the dimple's away from me. Clicks in. Now we want the gray wire, and this dimple, the raised side of the dimple of the connector, goes toward you. And then you'll feel it click in. Okay, now that that's done, we have the red and we have the black. Now fortunately, this is a no-brainer. The red is going to go on this outside tab at the bottom of the battery compartment, and the black is going to go on one of these two prongs on the top. One of these will remain blank, one of these will have the black lead. I don't think it really matters which one you use. I always use the far left. So let's slide that on there. Okay. Now here, this wire is going to give you some problems after the fact because it's so close to the edge of the seam lines of the body. So we're going to have to fiddle with that later, but for now let's just get it connected. Okay, that's on there. Snug. Alright, good. Now that we've got the wiring locked down, let's do the batteries and test them before we put everything back together. Because if you have your wiring wrong or you have your batteries swapped out, you don't really want to have to break back into this thing to fix it. Alright, so positive goes towards the red lead on the bottom. And then you flip it, your negative goes away from the red lead on the top. Alright, here's our light. I'm holding the button. We're in good shape. We're back in business. Alright, I'm going to take these batteries out just to keep everything lighter for now. Now what we're going to do is put the pod back together. The first thing I'm going to do is put the wing release assemblies back on, because if you forget to do that, you won't be able to reattach your wings, and that's a problem. Alright, so the way this works, you have a button, you have a cylinder, and you have your spring. The button has a release latch on it. That release latch goes through the cylinder. And as you can see, the cylinder has these two arms that go through the back end of the latch. Okay. Then at that point, you just drop the spring into the assembly. Now, we're going to flip this button toward the hole right here and slide it into place. It's keyed so that everything kind of has a home to live in. This cylinder has a slot right at the end of the arm to sit in, and it sits there very nicely. And now we're going to do that for the second one. We have our button. And now one thing to remember, these are not specific to one side. These are interchangeable, which is great. So you can use either button for either side, either cylinder and spring for either side. They're not specific. All right. So now we have our spring. It's going to go, let's see, our latch. It's going to go this way. We're going to throw this cylinder around it, and then we're going to put the spring in. And then we're going to set it in there. And as you can see, the button has a sort of hinge joint, hinge mounting area where it sits, and then the cylinder has this keyed slot at the end where it sits, just like the other one. Alright, so now that that's in place, this is where it gets finicky, because we now have to sandwich everything back together, but not kink any of the wires. Don't want these wires in the arm of the TIE fighter. So you have to tuck them all in this corner right here. Alright, now this red wire, I don't know if you can see this red wire likes to be a real pain because it's really close to the body seam on this side. So we might have to adjust that slightly with a screwdriver when we get everything in place. You also want to make sure that your cylinders don't fall out of their trenches backwards or forwards, because that could throw off you being able to successfully put everything back together. Alright, now the red wire is preventing me at this point from putting the TIE fighter back together. So I'm going to use a flat-headed screwdriver to gently pull it out of the way. And then I'm going to have to push. There we go. Now it's in and out of the way. Everything looks good so far. Okay, so now that we have everything nicely sandwiched back together, the next step is to get the front window in. The front window has a, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, the front window has, let's see, right here, it has a tab that allows it to slot at either the top or the bottom of the window frame, so that you can get it perfectly centered. Now, this tab tends to have serial numbering right at the edge of the part. So what I always like to do is put it at the bottom. Since we haven't screwed everything together yet, I'm going to gently, after making sure there's no lint anywhere, I'm going to gently open the assembly slightly. See if I can get, and if you have to open it up upside down. Okay, there's the tab. I'm going to slot that in. This can get really finicky. Okay, there it is. It's locked. We're in place. All right, we're in good shape. Oh, we lost a spring. Now, if you lose a spring, don't freak. You can just kind of open up the arm a little bit and push that spring back in. And then when you close the arm, the spring won't come out. So if you see a spring slide out, it's not a big deal. Just press that spring right back in there. Okay. Now that we have everything in place, let's get some screws back in here so that we don't have to keep holding this together. The cockpit pod is now back together. We do have the original battery configuration label, and I'm going to get some small amount of glue and put that in there at some point, but for now I'm just going to leave it out because it seems pretty baked. So let's get the batteries back in here into our newly cleaned battery compartment. Lock that up. Get our wings on here. And there we have it. Fully restored Darth Vader TIE Fighter from Kenner, 1979.